Here's a couple quotes from Benjamin Norton. Within hours of the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. bombed Somalia, Western-backed Saudi forces bombed Yemen, and Israel bombed Syria, just after Israeli occupation soldiers killed a teenage Palestinian. This is what the press calls civilized. This hypocrisy, I mean, absolutely, this bullshit, it's bullshit. Russia's going to invade Ukraine, that's bullshit. U.S. bombing Somalia, what the fuck is that shit? Western-backed Saudi, did we declare war on Somalia? Western-backed forces bombing Yemen, what the fuck we doing that shit for? Israel bombing Syria, what the fuck is that shit happening for? This headline says everything about the blatant Western imperial hypocrisy. Western corporate media coverage of Ukraine has gone full-on white nationalist, calling Ukrainians civilized white European Christians while whitewashing the U.S. war on Iraq, bombing of Yemen, and Israeli attacks on Syrians and Palestinians. So I want to go to Ina Shevchenko's tweet. How do I get to the search? Here on the bottom. Ina Shevchenko. Ina Shevchenko is currently living in Paris in exile because, you know, Putin's a piece of shit. She's a Ukrainian from the protest group Femin, and their big thing is they take off their shirt and it says, you know, fuck Putin or, you know, fuck religion or whatever. So they use their bodies to get the message out. And it's fucking brilliant. It's absolutely fucking brilliant. So, you know, Ina Shevchenko is, you know, beautiful. She is very pretty. But the fact that she's using her body to get her message out, I think it's some of the greatest protest activists in the world. Femin has some of the greatest protest activists in the world. And yeah, that's how you get your message out, right? Just put the message on the body of a naked woman. So the Ina Shevchenko put out this one tweet here where there was actually bloodshed. I hadn't seen much bloodshed because it always gets sanitized. But here's a video of a woman who had her foot blown off. And they're going to go film the foot. There it is. So the Ukrainians, the officials have told us that 3,500 Russians have been killed and 350 Ukrainians have been killed so far. I just want to read this article, actually. Ina Shevchenko, she types in French, and she's Ukrainian, and you have, you know, all this, I think this would be good, Der Standard, .at. How are you and your family doing? Just going to read it verbatim. My family has been trapped for 5 days between the apartment where they get blankets and food and the air raid shelter. The city where they live is located in the entrance area to the annexed Crimea. There, the war immediately began very violently. Your life has changed completely in just 5 days. It was still peaceful and normal 5 days ago, like mine in France or yours in Austria. It's really hard to understand what's happening. Houses, entire cities are being bombed. People are being killed. So much suffering has already been done in just 5 days, and all lives have been destroyed. And now I'm just telling what I hear from my family, not even what I hear in the news. My 14-year-old nephew received a message from a teacher yesterday saying that a school friend and her entire family were murdered in the car while trying to escape. How do you perceive the discourse in the media in Europe? One discusses the war about politics and ideological backgrounds, but here it is about human lives. I'm also talking to you out of desperation to tell the people of the European Union to put pressure on their governments. This war is an act of revenge for the fact that Ukraine has fought for its independence for 3 decades. What do you expect from the EU and the NATO states now? An active intervention in the war or support through weapons? Ukraine is fighting this war for Europe. Putin will not stop here. He himself has said he considers the independence of the former Soviet republics to be a mistake. He threatened a nuclear strike on Sunday. What else do you need? Of course, there is also a sign of his weakness because he did not expect Ukraine to fight back, and apparently his own military leadership is too afraid of him to tell him that it would not go as fast as he expected. I am not an expert in warfare, but it's clear that sanctions will not be enough. Putin doesn't care if his people suffer. Ukraine needs support from weapons. In some villages, people stop the tanks with their bicycles. It's unimaginable. And of course, humanitarian aid is needed. Many people don't even have enough food for their babies anymore. And an active military intervention, I myself am amazed that I am now saying something like this. But if you exclude military intervention as a last resort, it weakens the pressure on Putin. The world is shocked that Putin has now actually attacked. Did Putin surprise you? No. Putin did not suddenly go crazy. He came to power, and he first went to Chechnya, then came to Georgia, then Ukraine. He cannot accept a democratic, free neighboring country because sooner or later the people of Russia would want that too. He only tolerates puppet dictatorships around him, as in Belarus, where he has also deliberately weakened the opposition. In Austria, too, many industrialists have done good business with Putin's Russia, and many insist on the economy as a bridge builder. Some even claim that Putin started as a reformer more than 20 years ago. What do you say to that? Shevchenko. From the beginning, he wanted to install his regime and get rid of Boris Yeltsin's system. Only in this sense can he be called a reformer, but Putin is not a business partner. He is a threat. Listen to his speeches from 2000 to 2003. He was always a paranoid KGB man with an enormous drive for power and influence and a war criminal. Honestly, as one who herself was persecuted by one of his dictatorial puppets, former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, and whose family is now being bombed by Putin, I'm extremely hurt when people still whitewash their relations with Putin. Its current president, Vladimir Zelensky, is impressing the world with his speeches and his perseverance in Kiev. Does he surprise you? He is not my president. I've had a political asylum in France for about 10 years, and he became president in 2019. But yes, it seems that as more and more politicians in the world become clowns, here a clown has become a true leader. This should be a wake-up call for people in all countries, including here in France, in the sense that it doesn't matter who you choose, that it doesn't matter if you vote at all, because that person may one day be in a crisis or not. He came into politics with no experience, but perhaps that is why he feels very close to the population. Actually, it reflects the brave behavior of ordinary civilians. But whether he could rebuild Ukraine later, I can't say. Meanwhile, Putin refers to Ukrainians as Nazis, of course. Of course, there's progressives and conservatives and nationalists in Ukraine, as there are in every country. But Zelensky's election shows how absurd Putin's myth of denazification of Ukraine is. Ukraine has elected as president a Jew whose grandparents experienced the Holocaust. The far right-wing parties of Ukraine won around 5% in this election. A neo-Nazi party did not even get a mandate in parliament. I would say it looks differently in Germany and Austria, right? Today, entire Jewish communities in Ukraine are fleeing Putin's attacks, which he calls denazification. They also have connections to the Russian art scene, to intellectuals. Some of them, like feminists and homosexuals, have been persecuted by Putin for decades. What is the mood there now? The only people who can stop Putin are the Russians. They have watched for too long, tolerated him for too long, and reelected him. I'm completely disillusioned and disappointed with the opposition in Russia. It's nice to have a few thousand that are now demonstrating in Petersburg in Russia, but that's nothing in proportion to this huge country. I know that when they demonstrate, they sometimes have to go to jail for 15 days, but that's nothing compared to what the people of Ukraine are going through so bravely right now. I never thought about returning to Ukraine until 5 days ago, but now when I see what is happening there, the longing to be there is extremely strong. That's how many Ukrainians around the world are doing right now, and I'm just one of them. Colette Schmidt, 28-2-2022. Inez Shevchenko is an author, one of the front women of the feminist activist group Femin. She was born in Ukraine and granted political asylum in France in 2013. Rock on, Inez Shevchenko. Inez Shevchenko is my Joan of Arc. She needs to go parading through the streets of Kiev like Lady Godiva. Use her power of Femin to get the world to listen.